That was true at first, but then, just as the doctors foretold, they changed the life in the seeds and loins that were brave enough to stay. Wonders bloomed and walked. He broke off suddenly and asked, "Do any of you ever venture outside?" "A few of the men are allowed to," she told him, "for short trips in special protective suits, to hunt for canned food and fuels and batteries and things like that." "Aye, and those blind-souled slugs would never see anything but what they're looking for," he said, nodding bitterly. "They'd never see the garden where a dozen buds blossom where one did before, and the flowers have petals a yard across, with stingless bees big as sparrows gently supping their nectar. House cats grown spotted and huge as leopards, not little runts like Joe Louis here, stalk through those gardens, but they're gentle beasts, no more harmful than the rainbow-scaled snakes that glide round their paws, for the dust burned all the murder out of them, as it burned itself out. I've even made up a little poem about that. It starts, 'Fire can hurt me, or water, or the weight of earth, but the dust is my friend.' Ah, yes, and then the robins like cockatoos and squirrels like a princess's ermine, all under a treasure chest of sun and moon and stars that the dust's magic powder changes from ruby to emerald and sapphire and amethyst and back again. Oh, and then the new children." "You're telling the truth?" she interrupted him, her eyes brimming with tears. "You're not making it up?" "I am not," he assured her solemnly. "And if you could catch a glimpse of one of the new children, you'd never doubt me again. They have long limbs as brown as this coffee would be if it had lots of fresh cream in it, and smiling delicate faces, and the whitish teeth, and the finest hair. They're so nimble that I, a sprightly man and somewhat enlivened by the dust, feel like a cripple beside them. And their thoughts dance like flames and make me feel a very imbecile. Of course, they have 7 fingers on each hand and 8 toes on each foot, but they're the more beautiful for that. They have large pointed ears that the sun shines through. They play in the garden all day long, slipping among the great leaves and blooms, but they're so swift that you can hardly see them, unless one chooses to stand still and look at you. For that matter, you have to look a bit hard for all these things I'm telling you." "But is it true?" she pleaded. "Every word of it," he said, looking straight into her eyes. He put down his knife and fork. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Mine's Patrick." "Effie," she told him. He shook his head. "That can't be," he said. Then his face brightened. "Euphemia!" he exclaimed. "That's what Effie is short for. Your name is Euphemia." As he said that, looking at her, she suddenly felt beautiful. He got up and came around the table and stretched out his hand toward her. "Euphemia," he began. "Yes," she answered huskily, shrinking from him a little, but looking up sideways and very flushed. "Don't either of you move," Hank said. The voice was flat and nasal because Hank was wearing a nose respirator that was just long enough to suggest an elephant's trunk. In his right hand was a large blue-black automatic pistol. They turned their faces to him. Patrick's was abruptly alert, shifty, but Effie's was still smiling tenderly, as if Hank could not break the spell of the magic garden and should be pitied for not knowing about it. "You little—" Hank began with an almost gleeful fury, calling her several shameful names. He spoke in short phrases, closing tight his unmasked mouth between them while he sucked in breath through the respirator. His voice rose in a crescendo. "And not with a man of the community, but a pariah! A pariah!" "I hardly know what you're thinking, man, but you're quite wrong." Patrick took the opportunity to put in, hurriedly, conciliatingly. "I just happened to be coming by hungry tonight, a lonely tramp, and knocked at the window. Your wife was a bit foolish, and let kind-heartedness get the better of prudence." "Don't think you've pulled the wool over my eyes, Effie," Hank went on with a screechy laugh, disregarding the other man completely. "Don't think I don't know why you're suddenly going to have a child after 4 long years." At that moment, the cat came nosing up to his feet. Patrick watched him narrowly, shifting his weight forward a little, but Hank only kicked the animal aside without taking his eyes off them. "Even that business of carrying the wristwatch in your pocket instead of on your arm," he went on with channeled hysteria. "A neat bit of camouflage, Effie, very neat. And telling me it was my child when all the time you've been seeing him for months." Man, you're mad. I've not touched her. Patrick denied hotly, though still calculatingly, and risked a step forward, stopping when the gun instantly swung his way. Pretending you were going to give me a healthy child, Hank raved on, when all the while you knew it would be either in body or germplasm, a thing like that. He waved his gun at the malformed cat, which had leaped to the top of the table and was eating the remains of Patrick's food, though its watchful green eyes were fixed on Hank. I could shoot him down, Hank yelled between sobbing, chest-racking inhalations through the mask. I should kill him this instant for the contaminated pariah he is. All this while, Effie had not ceased to smile compassionately. Now she stood up without haste and went to Patrick's side. Disregarding his warning, apprehensive glance, she put her arm lightly around him and faced her husband. Then you'd be killing the bringer of the best news we've ever had, she said, and her voice was like a flood of some warm, sweet liquor in that musty, hate-charged room. Oh, Hank, forget your silly, wrong jealousy and listen to me. Patrick here has something wonderful to tell us. Hank stared at her. For once, he screamed no reply. It was obvious that he was seeing for the first time how beautiful she had become, and that the realization jolted him terribly. What do you mean? He finally asked unevenly, almost fearfully. I mean that we no longer need to fear the dust, she said, and now her smile was radiant. It never really did hurt people the way the doctors said it would. Remember how it was with me, Hank? The exposure I had and recovered from, although the doctor said I wouldn't at first, and without even losing my hair. Hank, those who were brave enough to stay outside and who weren't killed by terror and suggestion and panic, they adapted to the dust. They changed, but they changed for the better. Everything. Effie, he told you lies, Hank interrupted, but still in that agitated, broken voice, cowed by her beauty. Everything that grew or moved was purified, she went on ringingly. You men going outside have never seen it because you've never had eyes for it. You've been blinded to beauty, to life itself. And now all the power in the dust has gone and faded anyway, burned itself out. That's true, isn't it? She smiled at Patrick for confirmation. His face was strangely veiled, as if he were calculating obscure changes. He might have given a little nod. At any rate, Effie assumed he did, for she turned back to her husband. You see, Hank, we can all go out now. We need never fear the dust again. Patrick is a living proof of that, she continued triumphantly, standing straighter, holding him a little tighter. Look at him, not a scar or a sign, and he's been out in the dust for years. How could he be this way if the dust hurt the brave? Oh, believe me, Hank, believe what you see. Test it if you want. Test Patrick here. Effie, you're all mixed up. You don't know. Hank faltered, but without conviction of any sort. Just test him, Effie repeated with utter confidence, ignoring, not even noticing, Patrick's warning nudge. All right, Hank mumbled. He looked at the stranger dully. Can you count? He asked. Patrick's face was a complete enigma. Then he suddenly spoke, and his voice was like a fencer's foil, light, bright, alert, constantly playing, yet utterly on guard. Can I count? Do you take me for a complete simpleton, man? Of course I can count. Then count yourself, Hank said, barely indicating the table. Count myself, should I? The other retorted with a quick, facetious laugh. Is this a kindergarten? But if you want me to, I'm willin'. His voice was rapid. I've 2 arms and 2 legs, that's 4, and 10 fingers and 10 toes. You'll take my word for them. That's 24. I had 25, and 2 eyes and a nose and a mouth. With this, I mean. Hank said heavily, advanced to the table, picked up the Geiger counter, switched it on, and handed it across the table to the other man. But while it was still an arm's length from Patrick, the clicks began to mount furiously, until they were like the chatter of a pygmy machine gun. Abruptly, the clicks slowed, but that was only the counter shifting to a new scaling circuit, in which each click stood for 512 of the old ones. With those